Sallyanne Hartnell is a relationship and divorce coach, blogger, and podcaster. Your divorce swing woman, Sallyanne helps her clients answer the big questions they're asking about their relationship, shift unhealthy relationship patterns, decide whether to stay or leave, and divorce with less drama. She empowers you to see divorce as an opportunity to open your heart and mind to possibility, to reframe your story, reclaim your life, and liberate yourself for a future you're excited about. Welcome back to the Women's Empowerment Podcast. I am thrilled to introduce you to a brand new guest of the show. Sallyanne, welcome to the Women's Empowerment Podcast. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here today.
Thanks, Valerie. It is great to be here. I'm excited to share some space with you.
Yeah, I've been actually really looking forward to this conversation. You are a pretty new style of guest we've had on the show. We've had a handful of different coaches, but no one such as yourself. So I'd love for you to introduce yourself and share a little bit more about your story and how you got to where you are today.
Thank you. I am a relationship and divorce coach. I started my business 4.5 years ago. And it took me a while to really accept the nudges that the universe was sending me to step into this work. I have two young adult children. One is 20, one is 18. And I divorced their father, and I separated when they were 6 and 8, thereabout. It's a long time ago now, so I find it difficult to remember. And we did that really amicably. We are still friends. My family still treat him as a sort of an extended family member. We get along quite well. And when we divorced, I moved to a different area in an outlying suburb of Melbourne, Australia, where we're based. And people there did not realise for some time that we were divorced, because we'd turn up to the primary school, we'd turn up to sporting events for our kids, seemingly together, talking, laughing, and the kids would just move, comfortably between us. And so once they realised in that community that we were divorced, people would sort of ask questions and, well, how did you do it? How are you still friends? And I would be having conversations with mostly women who we're separating and I want a divorce like yours. So that was one part of it. And the other part of it was when we were negotiating and navigating our way through our separation and divorce, I was really looking for that next level of support, that someone who was not your best friend, someone who was not a lawyer, someone who was not a counselor. And I realized, like years later, of course, that what I was really looking for was someone to hold my hand and steer me through just the complexities of what separating and divorce bring up for you as a woman, as an individual, as a human, as a family. And that service just didn't exist. So those two components of my lived experience, as I said, listening to the nudges of the universe, I retrained as a life coach, and now I specialize working with humans who are separating or divorcing.
It's so incredible and so unique. And the story that you've just shared makes complete sense to how you got into what you're doing. And I think what makes you so great at what you do is that you have had that lived experience. And again, people are looking to you as whether that's proof or evidence or what it could be for them. I have not personally been married or separated for that matter. However, I have seen a lot of relationships, and some of those relationships are amicable. I have an aunt and an uncle who come to events together. They still go for dinner together and go to the movies together, and their children are adults with their own children. And so it's nice to have them both at family functions. And I still refer to this woman as my aunt, even though, they're not married anymore and all this. But then I also know relationships that don't have that same connection, and they don't want to be in the same room together, and they don't want to be part of extended families and whatnot. And I can imagine with children, there is an even deeper layer to all of the things that come up. And just speaking from what I've been able to see and from what I've learned from listening to your podcasts and watching you online, is that, there's not one right way and there's not one particular path. There are lots of different options, and it's really dependent on the family, the situation, the people, and so on. So it's really incredible to have someone like you in their corner, like you said, holding hands with them through this journey. Because again, I can only imagine the feelings that would come up and the questions and the uncertainties. And, you know, one of the things I've been able to, I guess, recognize in these types of situations, just as an outsider, as a friend of someone going through these things, is that there's a lot of unknowns and there seems to be a lot of shame around divorce or separation, especially with families. And so I wonder if we can speak a little bit to that today, to maybe it's I don't know what to call it, the overwhelm, the feelings that come up. How would you describe it? The
Mm,
everything.
the everything. Yeah, I often talk about overcoming the overwhelm. Now that happens whether it's an actual dissolution of a marriage or it's just a separation from a long-term partnership. So much it comes up. Even before you make the decision to separate, there is that rumination, that constant asking of questions over and over and over, fixation on the same questions, not being able to see a way through that overwhelm. And yeah, that's part of what I help my clients to do. When families are involved, when children are involved, and as you said, there's a next layer of complexity. It's really important to have somebody, whether it's a coach, whether it's your best friend, whether it's your counselor, lawyer, who can help you unpick and unravel and come back to what is the one thing I need to get done today? What is the one thing I need to move forward? What's going to move the needle forward? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely overcoming that overwhelm. And I'm curious if you know a little bit more about the shame part of it, because I think that's what I guess I'm really curious to know is that I don't know what the statistic is now, but I've heard it's over 50% of marriages end in divorce. Is that right? Half the marriages
That's
end in
definitely the case in Australia, and I know in the States, and I'm assuming Canada's similar. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, just based off the people I know, I can probably think of half of the people of my community is divorced. And yet there's so much of this discomfort and this shame and, is it bad? How do we move through that piece of it and those feelings?
Mm. I think the shame comes up because we're all sold still that happy ever after story, that there is one person out there for us. There is, you go out and you find your person. You commit to a relationship, a long-term partnership, a marriage with them. You create a family, and we're still sold that that is the story. That's the only story. And so if your life doesn't play out along the lines of that story, then it's wrong. And I really want to shift that. I really want to shift that crappy story because there are so many ways to live a life. There are so many ways to be connected and in relationship with other humans. And sometimes those relationships run their course. And whether that's, as I said, if that's a marriage and it involves a divorce, that can be um, that can be just a completion rather than something that's broken or wrong or bad. So I think if we can shift the story that there is one person out there for you, that it's a happy ever after and it's a forever commitment, if we can shift that story, then we can start to release that embedded shame that I think particularly women tend to feel. Um, yeah, I think there's, you know, Disney and movies and the media still have a lot to answer for in terms of selling us that story that, we need to go out, find the one and create a happy ever after for ourselves. And if it doesn't end up with a happy ever after, it's really wrong and broken and bad. I don't buy that.
Mhm. Mhm. I've heard you talk about the myths of love before and how it's so easy to get caught up in those Disney fantasy, whatever it is, the stories that we've been told. And so to be able to rewrite that, I mean, those were ingrained when I was a kid. I was watching those movies and listening to those fairy tales. I mean, I've seen some of the newer Disney movies, and there's definitely seems to be a shift happening in the narrative, which is great, but still rewriting a lot of those scripts for sure. Is there anything that any piece of advice for someone who, maybe someone such as myself, who is going into more of a more serious partnership where marriage is on the table and, those quote unquote legal commitments, we'll call them. Is there any advice that you would give someone, or even someone who's newly married for that matter, to help them with rewriting the script or to help them create that, more meaningful, more, I don't want to use the word realistic, but, a more realistic story?
Have the hard conversations. Don't silence yourself. Don't silence your voice. Don't push down your feelings. Allow all of that to come to the surface and find really healthy ways to communicate your wants, your needs, your desires, and to move through conflict. I think there's still a lot of silencing of our own voice, pushing down our needs, pushing down our wants, and not being willing to step into hard conversations. Healthy, happy, long term relationships, let's call them successful in inverted commas relationships, aren't ones where there is no conflict. They are ones where each person in the relationship, each member of the relationship is willing to stand in that discomfort and to move through conflict to a resolution. They're willing to show up and be vulnerable. They're willing to have the hard conversations. So in terms of shifting that narrative, shifting that story, if you think about the classic Disney stories, there's always a power imbalance. If you think about Cinderella and the prince, there's a power imbalance. So redressing that power imbalance, coming in as two equal people committed to the relationship and moving it forward, committed to your own individual growth, but committed to the growth of the couple, of the relationship. That really involves having the hard conversations and bringing things to the table so that you can move through the conflict and come out the other end.
How you're going to make it easy. It's just kidding. Oh, yeah, the hard conversations. Those are so much fun. But in all seriousness, I will say that I definitely have experienced quite a maturity, I feel, in the last several years, and specifically with the relationship that I'm in now compared to the relationship that I was last in. And I remember making a commitment to myself, which was really similar to what you said. And I'm not going to silence myself anymore. I'm not going to just let this person say and do and act how they want to act, even though it doesn't make me feel good. And so that was really empowering for me to leave that relationship, as challenging as that was, as heartbreaking as that was. And of course, it wasn't a divorce, but breakups are hard too. So
Breakup, whether there's the legal bit of the paperwork for divorce or not. Yeah. The emotional and practical implications are the same. Yeah.
mhm. And when I was first dating my now partner, I definitely shied away from some of the conversations that he wanted to have. He is older than I am, and he has more life experience than me in certain areas, like buying a house, for example, and all these different parts of that part of his journey. And so, and I actually had never lived with my partner before, so a lot of this was really new to me. And so he was bringing up these conversations. I was like, "Whoa, we just met." We just started living together. And it was a hesitancy for sure on my part, but I'm really glad that those conversations were open. And even the fact that he wanted to have those conversations with me, that was a different feeling. So even though I was nervous to have it, the fact that I was being met as a partner and not just as this lesser whatever, like whatever the case may be. Cause so when you talk about those dynamics and the power imbalances, I see it a lot in relationships. And so I do have a question about that, because I can think of handfuls of couples that come to my mind where maybe one person is making more money than the other, or one person has more quote unquote success in a different way than the other, or passion for their job, or whatever it is. Like there is always, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's always going to be some sort of imbalance in some area of their life or their relationship. So what do you say to help come together in a way that, maybe that one person can't make as much money as their partner, but is there somewhere else where there's a balance that can be made?
I'm going to answer it in a slightly sideways manner. And that is that I really believe what I know for healthy, happy couples with longevity, they're each other's biggest cheerleader and champion. So it's not a competition about who makes more money. It's not a competition about who's more successful, who's more. It's that each person is the other's biggest cheerleader.
Yeah. You're coming in with the hard things, but I'm here for all of this. It's great to hear you say that because really it's not just about you or just about them. It's about the partnership. And you mentioned this earlier, you can have your own goals and they can have their own goals, but you come together also as a team. So it's you, me, and us. And I really like this philosophy because part of what I believe is I'm a very independent person myself. I have lots of goals. I am building my brands and my businesses. I started this podcast. We've talked about this before, but it's not something that I want to bring my partner into in terms of like investing in my business or being the co-host of my podcast or whatever that looks like, but I want their support with it. So, but I also want them to have their own goals, their own hobbies, their own hopes and dreams too that I would love to support in the cheerleader type of way as well. So, it it's nice to have those reminders or to hear that from someone else because sometimes it feels like, especially you probably know this from the online world and having a
Mm.
podcast. I feel like I'm talking to myself a lot of the time. I love these guest episodes, but also I don't know like my partner loves skydiving. I've never been skydiving. I don't know if I will go skydiving. I'm very excited for him to skydive. I will go to the skydiving place and I will watch him skydive. That's about as close as I'm getting to doing that right now. But the fact that we can support each other in these ways, I definitely feel has been key to us coming together and understanding each other and supporting each other. So, as much as, there was a sideways answer, I definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it's really important to maintain that you, me, us, and the us actually needs to be the first thing. So there's the us, and then there's the you and the me, particularly when children become involved, particularly when a couple has children, because oftentimes they lose the us. They lose focus on the us, and that becomes less of a priority because there's you, there's me, there's two kids, there's the dog, there's work, there's the house, and there's all the things. So maintaining the us as a priority while still, as you just said, maintaining your own hopes, dreams, values, goals, whatever. But maintaining the us as a priority is really important in terms of not ending up needing to need a divorce coach.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I like that you said us comes first because I know that you've said this on your podcast before. You've talked about how the healthy relationships, and it's not verbatim, but you talk about how healthy relationships, you don't want to forget about that us unit because our lives can be so busy that we forget about us and then we don't take time to go on those dates and to kind of relive those honeymoon phases of our relationship because we just get so caught up in all of the other things. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that us part together. It's really important. Now, this is great information for healthy relationships or how to maintain those. Let's go back to the divorce, the separations, because I mean, that's what you do, first of all. But let's say we are ruminating on the questions, we're leaning towards a decision, and as a couple, and we are deciding that us is no longer a thing and we're ready to separate. Can you walk us through a little bit about maybe not like the logistical process of it, but perhaps the feelings and the emotional piece of it and how we can grow from there?
I think the first thing that comes up for many once they've made the decision is if let's talk about it being a mutual decision, because if you've been blindsided by your partner, then there's a whole different host of emotions and feelings and thoughts that need to be processed. But if this is a mutual decision, one of the first things that comes up is grief. Because not only are you grieving the loss of that partnership, you're grieving the loss of the happy ever after that you thought you were going to have. So allowing grief to surface and processing that in whatever healthy ways you choose to process it is really important. I think if you want an amicable relationship going forward, particularly if you have children and you're going to have to remain connected because of the kids or young adults or whoever, finding ways to communicate effectively and well is really important. You're getting divorced, you're separating, you're breaking up for really good reasons. And very often, one of those reasons is that you struggle to communicate effectively with one another. So, finding ways to dial down your nervous system, to regulate your nervous system so that you can go into a conversation about the logistics is really important too. If shame comes up for you, again, process that. For many of my clients who are amicably or jointly deciding to separate, there's still a real sense of sadness, even those, and I work predominantly with women, not only with women, but even those women who they know it's done, I'm out of here. It's my decision. He doesn't want to separate. I'm out. There's still sadness. And sometimes that is a surprise that, hey, I chose this, but gee, now I'm really sad and I'm really grieving. So processing, allowing all the emotions. And for other women, other clients, they're actually really happy. So if and they get a bit upset sometimes when they're explaining to someone else, oh, we've decided to separate, we're divorcing, and everyone's like, oh, so sad. Well, actually, it might not be sad. So if you're the what I call the first responder, if you are being told by a friend, relative, colleague that they've chosen to separate and divorce, don't respond with, oh, that's so sad. That tips people back into that shame, back into that narrative of the happy ever after. So be really open about the way you respond to someone who's sharing that they're separating or choosing to divorce. Again, that was a bit of a sideways answer, but I always like to drop that in because that first response when somebody tells you that they're divorcing is really important and can actually inform the way their divorce processes. If you whip it into a frenzy of, oh my God, I really never liked him. He was always a this or she was always a, that can really trigger and activate the person that you're speaking with, and they can get sucked into that narrative, and that can snowball into a high conflict situation when it didn't need to. So yeah, if you are the first responder, choose your words really gently.
That's so interesting that you say that because I can remember very vividly a time when, the girls were getting together and one of the girlfriends said, such and such happened. Me and him are breaking up. And you could just see, I mean, all of us were there, but each person had a very different response. And her energy, the one who was sharing the information, changed like a yo-yo, a roller coaster. It was crazy. And I remember that to me was a moment where I was really present and I saw her, but I felt very deeply in sympathy and empathy and I remember thinking, I'm not going to respond that way to when people say that we've broken up. And so maybe you can give us some examples too, because definitely freaking out about it and telling her how much we hated that guy was not working. But for me, and you can please coach me on this if I didn't get this right, but I pulled my friend aside and I said, "Listen, I'm sorry to hear of the news. How are you feeling?" And obviously, she was feeling a lot of different things after all those people were all over her. And I just said, I can imagine that what you're going through is really tough and really hard on you. And you're probably experiencing a lot of different things. And I just want you to know that no matter what, I'm here for you. And even though I totally hated that guy and they were definitely wrong for there, but yeah, what are some things that we could say in the
I think what you just shared is almost perfect. That's big news because if you say I'm sorry, that implies it's a bad thing. That's big news. How are you feeling? Or what do you need from me right now? I'm here for you. Let me know if I can help in any way. Those kinds of things rather than projecting our own, oh my God, or he was a bastard or whatever. Um, just reflecting back that it's big, it's hard, and I'm here.
Mhm. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because I've been there too. Where I'm like, I don't want any unsolicited advice. What's done is done. But
Yeah.
yeah, we have very emotional and excitable friends. But
Friends, because they're reacting like that because they're invested in you and they love
Mhm.
you, if you, and they don't want you to be hurting. However, yeah, just tread really gently.
And I'm glad that you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation how, you weren't looking for a best friend, you weren't looking for a lawyer, you weren't looking for this and that and the other thing. You just wanted someone to be there. And in an unbiased way too, because yeah, you're my best friends are always gonna pick my side. Well, they better, because they're my best friends. Your family is probably gonna pick your side.
Sometimes,
Maybe.
yeah, exactly. Sometimes families don't. That can be really interesting and challenging when your family actually doesn't pick your side or doesn't have your back.
So now that we've talked about family with that, because I find the breakups, the separations, sometimes it's not the partner. Sometimes it's the family member, the sibling, the parent. Sometimes I have to distance myself from certain family members who I love my family, but boundaries have been crossed with that. So, can we talk a little bit about maybe how do we I don't know if I'd ever cut a family member out of my life, but I do know of people who say I haven't talked to my sister in 20 years or whatever the case may be. So, does that involve any of your work, or does your work involve any of that at all?
Sometimes, but I think there are similarities in how we navigate that, whether it's a divorce or a sibling relationship or any other kind of breakup relationship. We break up relationships all the time in different ways, shape, or form. It doesn't have to be an intimate life partner relationship. And I think the way we do it is the same. If you feel that your boundaries have been transgressed repeatedly and you've communicated that back to the person that, hey, this is not okay, and they keep pushing, they keep overstepping, and they keep transgressing your boundaries, and then it is time to break up. And I think it doesn't matter who it is. It can be your sister or your cousin or your parent. Yeah. So I work with clients for whom that's happening almost as a part of their divorce. There's a lot of judgment as we've already spoken to in this podcast episode. There's a lot of judgment, and sometimes that comes from your sister, your mother, your aunt. If you're still female, it's your father, whoever it is. We are judged when we make big life decisions, and oftentimes, if you've chosen to leave a relationship, or let's say there's been infidelity, another person involved, there's a lot of judgment, and that can really impact on a person when navigating a divorce. So oftentimes I'm dealing with that kind of stuff with my clients as well. So it's not only the separation from their partner, it's separation from other people, be it on their own family side or their in-laws side. And I think it does come back to shared values, boundaries, communication, and respect. And if somebody, whoever it is not respecting you and your boundaries, you've communicated that clearly and they keep pushing, then it is time to divorce them, whether you're married to them or you're not.
Mm, yeah, and those are more difficult conversations to have.
Have the hard conversations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes when it's a relationship that is a little bit removed from that intimate partner marriage relationship, it can, you can potentially, and I'm going to use the word avoid. I don't really like it, but you can avoid having that really confrontational conversation because you don't have to live with them. You don't have to unpack a, a household or a family. You can just gradually distance yourself from that person, holding your boundary as sacred. and standing in your power and in your energy. You don't always have to have that confrontational conversation with them. Have the hard conversation with yourself, tell them no, whatever it is, and then just gradually disengage.
Mm-hmm. I like that. And I keep thinking as we're talking about all these different kinds of relationships and these reactions and these feelings that are coming up, there's a lot of it is this mindfulness, this presence, this self-awareness of recognizing where we're coming from. Because sometimes those communication issues are learned experiences or learned stories from our childhood. And without us having our own self awareness, how will we recognize when we're projecting, when we're losing our temper on whatever the case may be, when we're not paying attention or not communicating effectively? So, and then knowing like th- this feeling is coming up for me, I'm feeling XYZ, and recognizing it and saying, this is the partnership I want to be in, or this isn't the experience that I want to be having, or this is the boundary. What is the boundary? If you didn't make the boundary, then you don't have one. I was having a conversation with my partner, and I should have asked him permission for this, but that's okay. And he said he doesn't feel like I'm appreciative of something that he does. And so I said, how can I show you my appreciation, or what will help you see that I'm appreciative? And he couldn't answer. And I said, okay, well, you can think about it, because if you can't answer what you think appreciation looks like, sounds like, feels like, whatever, smells like, then I can't show you my gratitude because you don't know how to recognize it. And he didn't like that. He didn't like that very much, but he's going to go off and think about it, and he's going to let me know. But it's true. How will you know that you've reached your success? How will you know that you feel loved? How will you know that you've communicated properly if you don't define what that means for you?
I love that you were brave enough to have that conversation with him. I love that he was brave enough to say to you, I feel he expressed a need that was being unmet in the relationship. You asked him, how can I meet that need for you? And so the next bit is, of course, resolving that conflict, if you like, and defining for yourselves as a couple what that looks like. And if he can't come back and if he is unable to say, oh, this would work for me, then it's an opportunity for the two of you to brainstorm. You can say, what if I did X? And you can say, hmm. So finding that resolution. A lot of relationships break down because of unmet needs. And a lot of the problem is that we're not taught to express our needs. We're taught to go silent. We're taught to use passive aggressive tactics. We're taught to get angry, frustrated, allow resentment to build and then blow. Whatever it is that you've been taught through your childhood, through your family of origin, how your needs were met as a child, how they were left unmet, what you saw demonstrated to you in terms of interpersonal relationships within your family, how your parents behaved. They're all the stories that we carry. So yes, allowing yourself to feel what you feel, being able to name it. I am feeling like I'm unappreciated. I'm not feeling loved, or I'm feeling resentful. Why am I feeling resentful? Drop down into it. Having that self-awareness to recognize and name what you're feeling, and then go next level, next step, and say, well, what is the unmet need here? How can I then express it to my partner? How can he or she meet me in that conversation without it being an argument? And then redefining how that need can be met in happy, healthy ways. Conversation, having conversations, being vulnerable.
This is the theme of today's podcast: how to have hard conversations. I love it. I will say though, like, I wasn't brave enough in a lot of my relationships. This is probably the first relationship that I've had where I feel brave enough in my own self. And part of that has been learning about myself and discovering myself and getting to know myself and taking myself out on dates and being able to love myself. And I think too, with my partner, he is also learning about himself, because as we get to know each other's families more, we're both coming back like, okay, so this makes a lot of sense. Both of us are like, yeah, so my mom does that, and that's kind of weird. But it's really interesting because we can come back together after going to these family functions, vacations, whatever it is, and we can say, okay, well, let's unpack this a little bit together. I'm noticing that this comes from that part of my family, and or I didn't get this as a kid, and no one ever taught me this emotional intelligence and how to express myself. So, you know, my partner and I are both learning how to say, "Hey, I don't feel this." And we're both learning how to say, "This is what works for me," or "This is what I think I need," or "This is what I want to try." And so, it is challenging to have. It's those are hard conversations, and it is difficult to sometimes articulate what it is that we need, but I think just allowing each other that space has been really helpful for us to grow as humans and for us to grow as a partnership. So, yeah, I'm going to advocate for those hard conversations.
The other thing that I often talk about when I'm talking about healthy relationships, and I want to also say you can have a healthy relationship while you're separating, while you're divorcing. And of course, that doesn't involve any sort of abuse, be it within the relationship, be it substance abuse, whatever. Okay, which I'm talking about an amicable separation. You can have a healthy relationship with each other while you separate. It's difficult, but being able to have, bring that vulnerability, have those hard conversations is important. And another element, this is why I started this comment. The other element with happy, healthy relationships is, as we discussed earlier, you have each other's back. You are each other's biggest cheerleader. You also want what's best for that other person. And that's why I say you can have a healthy, happy relationship while you unravel, unpack, and separate or divorce. If you still want what is in the best interest, what is best for that other person. So, yes, you're their cheerleader, but you also want good things for them. And so, committing to doing good things for one another. How can I make my partner's day happier today? How can I make my ex partner, my co parent's day a little easier today? And that might be as simple as sending them a picture of your kids doing something fun and amazing. You don't even have to send a comment, you just send a picture. How can I make their life a little easier as we navigate this storm that is separation and divorce with our kids?
Mm. Yeah, that's very big for, I think, a lot of people to do, but it's possible. And there are a lot of couples that are proof that it is possible. And I'm sure the people that you've worked with can also attest to having you helping them and holding their hand through it to make it a lot easier for them to do. So, this conversation has been really incredible. I did not know where we were going to go today, but I really liked all of it. Is there anything that hasn't been said that you really want to share?
I don't think so. I think we've covered a lot of ground. Mm.
I think so too. I'm afraid if we get onto something else, we're gonna need to part two. Sally, where can we find you? Where can we follow you? How can we support your business?
I'm most active on Instagram at Reflect Coaching. You can also find me on my website, www.reflectcoaching.com.au, or on LinkedIn, and also via my podcast, which is Reflect, Reclaim and Liberate. I would love to chat more with anybody who's found this conversation inspiring or uplifting, or anyone who's navigating something difficult in a relationship. Thanks, Valerie.
Thank you. This has been absolutely wonderful. We do have one more part to our show. It's a rapid fire round. However, before I say that, because I do not want to forget, I will have all of your links to find you to follow you at ValerieLevineLife.com/Sallyanne, SALLYANNE. Are you ready for our rapid fire round of 4 questions?
I think so.
Okay. Question number 1 is, what are you currently reading, or what is your favorite?
I think all-time favorite book would be To Kill a Mockingbird.
I actually really love that book too. Question number 2 is, what does empowerment mean to you?
Ooh. Empowerment means that I stand really comfortably in my own power, in my own skin, and I can voice my wants, needs, desires. I can speak my truth.
I just got goosebumps on that one. Question 3 is what is your longest standing habit?
Going to bed early,
What time do you go to bed?
about 9:30 usually, 10
Good,
o'clock.
yeah. Yeah, that's me too, actually. I really have been loving going to bed early.
I love mornings, so going to bed early, getting up early. Going to bed early, getting up early, long-standing habit.
Oh, that's so great. Number 4 is what are you currently working towards?
My word for 2023 is flourish. So I'm working towards growing, flourishing in all areas of my life, including my business, but just really stretching. So I'm working towards a flourishing 2023.
That's so beautiful. I really, really love that word. Thank you so much for being part of the Women's Empowerment Podcast. This has really been amazing. I feel like I've learned so much. You've given me a lot to think about. I'm excited for the part 2 of that conversation I'm going to have with my partner. And I feel like I actually do have a few more tools for myself, but also for the people in my life who are going through separation. And I definitely have a contact of who I can share even this episode as a maybe an introduction to you and all of the amazing things you do. So thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for following the nudge or answering the call to doing what you do and for being so good at it. I'm very excited to see how you flourish this year.
Thank you.